Okay, as we begin, I wanted to invite everyone, especially you two, to our inaugural sense-making sessions, which is where we're going to be building community around taking an honest, hard look at some of the big problems of our time and trying to relate with them with more intentionality, I would say, and depth. And so, as we get started, I wanted to dive straight into some check-ins. We'll come back and lay out a little bit of a structure of where we're going to go in the call today, but I want to just presence who's in the room with us. And so I'm happy to start that off. I'm Sam. I'm calling to you from near the town of Carcassonne in the south of France, where I'm currently staying in the residency program with Retribalize, which is a project I've been a part of for a little while now. And yeah, I'm coming to the call with a sense of anticipation and enthusiasm. I feel excited to start giving and contributing to a bigger conversation about what's going on in the world and how we can live meaningfully in relation to that bigger picture. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a trial and error process for me to see how this goes and see how I can show up in a way where I allow more of my gifts and my willingness to give to shine. So it's also a great pleasure already to connect two of my oldest friends in the two of you. So I'm really glad that we're doing this and looking forward to come back to it every week as a space that evolves over time.
Mm. Mm.
Benny, I might throw it to you if you
Yeah,
feel like checking in with your name, where you're calling from, and how you're doing today.
sure. Yeah, just really hearing what you're saying and aligning with it, feeling like I could say like almost the exact same thing and just feel deep resonance. So, yeah, I'm actually in Southern Oregon right now in a little cute town called Ashland, as a part of my road trip, doing the coast and cutting inland and about to go back up to Portland, just all embedded in this beautiful Pacific Northwest gem on the earth. And yeah, now that I think I'm feeling a bit of low energy today. And so I know that can sometimes get in the way of the shine coming through. But as I'm speaking now, I'm feeling more alive and yeah, just ready to like buckle up and, commit to a space like this because it feels very important. I think it's one of the stronger callings in my life to just be a part of conversation that feels meaningful and connected to what's at stake in our lifetimes in regards to like the integrity of life and the interdependent systems that support biodiversity and complexity and yeah, just the things that we hold sacred. I think it's so important to use our intellect to try to grasp that, you know? So yeah, I'm just feeling glad, excited to be like a part of putting this out there and like also being able to just excited to be a recipient of spaces like this.
Okay, well, thank you, Benny, and throwing it straight to Ben.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm calling from London in the United Kingdom. And yeah, it's been such a hot week and the infrastructure here is just not suited for the summer heat that we're getting now. So I think that strained my energy quite a bit coming into this space. Similar to Benny, I'm bringing a bit of tiredness, but yeah, I'm glad to be here. And I do like Benny's descriptions of callings. And maybe I was a bit before when I said that I kind of have a more solidified idea of my place in the metacrisis. I might have been a bit too extreme in that description of how I feel. I am still I mean, I'm flexible about how I can contribute. And I think having these conversations is so important to me for bringing me back to what really matters in this life and what we do hold sacred, I think, because especially living in a big city, it's just so easy to get swept up by all the bullshit, you know, all the advertising that you encounter every day and just the materialist um, values of the people I meet um, and that I have in my own mind. It is very distracting in a way compared to being in nature or being in a small town. I can imagine. Um, but yeah, I'm really glad to be here and to have a dope conversation with you two and to explore some cool stuff. Yeah,
Mm.
we'll see where we go, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, with that in mind, I wanted to pivot to sharing a bit of our intended structure for how the evening is going to go over the next 80 minutes or so. And the main intention here really is to create space for reflection. One of my teachers, John Vervaeke, talks about how having moments of self-reflection is one of the defining characteristics, not only of the wisest people, but also of what you could call higher forms of consciousness. So rather than being absorbed or carried along by the current of life, it's like choosing with intention to set aside some time to look at and reflect the process that we're a part of. And so, with that in mind, we're going to be looking at several key questions and reflecting on them together that have to do with this topic that we've chosen to address, which is really this intersection of awareness of the metacrisis, these sort of big picture issues that can be abstract, but are actually very real in our life right now, and looking at how we sense make in relation to them. And what I mean by sense making is not only epistemology in this context, like how we know about those issues, but the way that we relate to them. And so, like when we, this is the main topic of the call today, is like when we look at topics like uh, ecological collapse of different kinds, how are we relating to those issues? And the idea is that by looking at questions like that and exploring them together, we can start to relate with these issues or these aspects of our life in a way that has more agency and that can empower us more. And that's sort of the general direction where I'm wanting to take this. We're going to include a bit of visualization, meditation, and try to connect with the body as much as we can throughout the call. And I want to like explicitly make space for that. This is also a space where we can really be authentic with each other, when we can name whatever's actually happening in our body in real time. Benny, is there anything that you wanted to share in terms of how you wanted to frame the call, and then moving toward just at the beginning here, any key framings about this main topic that we've brought up that you feel called to share at the outset?
Um, yeah, just that there's many different perspectives to take and maybe invoking like the blindfolded people feeling the elephant and that we are like seeking out perspectives to with the spirit of like a greater and greater understanding of truth. So that we have like a um John Vervaeke talks about like learned ignorance, I think. Is that what he says? Um yeah, learning that we don't know. As we learn more, more becomes obvious that it's much more complex than we could grasp. Um yeah, so I think just being kind of loose and feeling free to explore things without worry of being offensive or sounding stupid. Yeah, I think I'm feeling good with that. Um,
Mm.
You want to
Okay,
kick us
well,
off with yeah.
yeah. Well, I want to say just feel free to come back if there's anything more that you want to add about how you're approaching this. For me, I think this comes from the recognition that I want to create more spaces in life where we can talk about issues related to the meta crisis with freedom, and intentionality. And I notice in my life that many people we don't really have the emotional resources to grapple with those topics.
Hmm.
And so part of the intention here is that just by doing that together, we can find those emotional resources and try to avoid getting sucked into despair or nihilism or avoidance and just hold the uncertainty, the radical uncertainty of this crazy, chaotic world that we live in. And that by doing that together, it moves us closer toward making better sense of these issues, but also taking agency over them in the context of our lives. Okay, so from there, I really wanted to bring up the first key question for reflection. And so what we're going to be focusing on is the ecological aspect of the meta crisis. And so there are obviously many dimensions to it. We could talk about geopolitics or economics, and so on. Sense-making crisis, crisis of loneliness, the meaning crisis. But today, really, I noticed in my life, I want more spaces to talk about the ecological dimensions of this, not just climate change, but the whole, ecological devastation that's happening around the world. And also the regeneration that's going on as well, we should name. It's not all a doom and gloom story relating to the meta
Hmm.
crisis. Um, and so I want to ask this question in terms of like our relationship with this aspect of the meta crisis. How are we relating to it today? And so that's our first question for reflection. We're trying to ask how this aspect of the world, this aspect of the meta crisis, how is it showing up in our life as our life is now? I feel like throwing that to Ben right off the bat, if you feel like going first. Does anything come to mind right away?
Hmm. So, sorry, the question is how do we relate to the ecological collapse or just ecological crisis
Yeah,
in our
if
day-to-day lives?
exactly. If
Or
you had to describe the
yeah.
way that you're relating to it now, how would that description go?
Hmm. That's a difficult question. That's a good question. Um, it feels like a problem of such large scope that it's just incomprehensible and it's kind of really abstract, but also very heartbreaking at the same time. Because I mean, you can read statistics and projections about global warming or loss of biodiversity or, you know, plastic pollution. But it is, I mean, reading them is quite horrifying in a heady way. But I think feeling it viscerally is difficult, especially because it's such a gradual process. All of these different ecological problems are so gradual that yeah, it's it just feels like I don't know, it just feels like the fate of or the destiny that we're charting that course and that's just the way things are. That's the time that we live in. And it's just the course of human history that we're destroying the environment and it feels like it's it's such a big thing to correct, but we're not doing it quickly enough. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but
Hmm.
that was just some, yeah, spitballs.
Hmm. I noticed myself with this temptation to go into circling and wanting to spend, an hour with you on this topic, but I want to honor our structure today and try to give space for Benny and myself to also answer this question for reflection. Um, and so I want to add a couple things here, like the way that I'm relating with this. Honestly, a lot of the time I think is by shutting it out. I don't think I have the cognitive resources to continually focus on what I perceive to be like an ongoing ecological collapse. That it's hard to know what my agency is in relation to that. So it doesn't make much sense to keep giving my attention to it day after day. But I also know that we're going through this planetary moment of initiation as a whole human species and as representing the Earth. And when I connect with that, it allows me to bring a context to that ecological collapse that reframes it. And so it allows me to connect with not only despair at the tragedy that's going on in the form of ecocide, but also having some hope at the same time. And I think for me, when I look at the biological, ecological dynamics, it's with this sense that it's when collapse processes happen that something new, fundamentally new, can emerge for the first time. And sometimes those processes of chaos and breakdown are actually a prerequisite for certain forms of transformation. And I think, yeah, I'm trying to, like, I think part of my intention in making this call was to want to give more space in my life to actually look at what's happening ecologically and try to feel that together. But I also have this strong inclination not to get sucked too much towards catastrophizing and towards despair, because I know that there are some regenerative solutions and pockets of, vitality around the world. And I know also that there are committed and dedicated humans who are working together to create the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, despite the destruction that we see. And I feel it's incredibly important to keep in touch with that and presence it here.
Mm.
Mm. So to summarize that, the way I relate to it is committed and trying to be balanced, but sometimes detached. Might immediately throw that to Benny. How about for you?
Yeah, like piggybacking your last point, there was something about not um not falling into wishful thinking. It being like, oh, the tsunami's coming. Like, surely we'll be able to fashion some sort of like big wall to stop it. Um, or just something's gonna work out. Like trying to find a balance between that and then just complete like, oh, we're fucked. There's nothing we can do. It's too late. Um, yeah, I think ultimately like just the a big sense of uncertainty, but like at the intellectual level, but at the deeper like faculties of like the heart and gut, there is a deep sense of like knowing and sacredness. Um, just something big that is potential to happen. And I think like kind of maybe going back to like the check-in question a bit, like I'm wanting to I'm wanting to more consciously cultivate that sense of meaningfulness through like bringing this information to the surface in community. Like when I watched the AI doc, um, I felt such a sense of meaningfulness and like there's something at stake here. And so I think a lot of what I experience in relationship to the meta crisis is just like apathy and um yeah, just abstraction. Um and I think blindness because it isn't like a tsunami coming where you feel the threat through your immediate senses. It's like the meta crisis actually requires a sort of cognitive depth and I think like collective intelligence to be able to hold it. Um, because it is our intellect and abstraction that created the tools and godlike technology that are causing a lot of the existential threats. So I think we also need those faculties to be able to understand it, but not just that. Um, like we definitely need to feel into it And I think a lot of the sense of wrongness we feel is that, yeah, I mean, I think it's showed up with like all these reports of like the super El Nino and the heat waves that are hitting everywhere. Feels like it's hard not to think of global warming, global heating, climate change, along with that, um, as causal to it. Um, but yeah, I think I experience it in this room as like I don't know, um, where any of this furniture came from, or the cup that I'm holding, or the laptop in front of me. I think like the idea of this all was existing somewhere like in the natural world and like was extracted and molded for consumer good. Um, I think that sense of blindness to that is, I think, is one way of experiencing the metacrisis, because what are the externalities of all the things that I'm benefiting from every day? So yeah, that was a lot, and maybe different threads in there. So I'll leave it at that.
Mm. Mm. So as we move to the next part of the call, I want to, name one of the, I guess, the themes which is structuring this. Is that what we're attempting to look at is the way that we're relating with these topics. We're trying to bring into view the perspective that we normally take and reflect on that. And so this point that you named about like taking different perspectives is the hope here is that by making space to actually talk about this and be with it, that something can shift in the way that we habitually relate with this aspect of reality. So part of the goal here is not necessarily we're not trying to achieve anything necessarily. We're actually just trying to be with an aspect of our life that we're already with, but often in a an unconscious or detached way, or a way which is having us jump to certainty too quickly. Like for me, I noticed that the more that I learn about these issues, the more that we can talk about them together, the more uncertain I get, which is quite scary. Part of what I wanted to create here was space to just be with that uncertainty and name it, not knowing what's going to happen. Anyway,
Yeah.
I heard in there that you you feel that like part of what we have to do, and I deeply agree, right, is to embody this and to feel it. This is a huge part of what I wanted to aim for today, especially considering the demographic that we've got, like three, youngish men still. I think there's
Yeah.
this tendency for people like us, I'm going to say, to detach and to abstract and intellectualize. And as much as possible, I want to notice how we can tend to take that kind of a perspective. And as much as possible, let's try to practice to bring it down into our bodies and make it real to us, make it visceral and be with that.
Mm.
And so we're going to
Um,
do, yeah,
oh, sorry, Sam. If
yeah,
I may, the abstraction can be such a big avoidance in itself, right?
yeah.
I've noticed that in myself more and more. Just this unceasing inner dialogue is a lot of the time just a way for me to avoid feeling what's in my body. Yeah, sorry, a bit of a digression, but
No, no, absolutely. And it's like part of the question we can ask is there anything that we're avoiding now? How can we practice together relating with ecological crisis in a way which doesn't avoid it, but which allows that to be present?
Yeah, I think one question that feels kind of pertinent before we transition into the the meditation, is like with all the heat waves and stuff, like how do I know if that's caused from human activity, climate change stuff, or like, is it just part of the Earth's process on its own? Um, how do I think about that?
Mm.
It's a question that comes up.
You mean as like a scientific question or a different type of question, more of a like a phenomenological question?
Um, yeah, I'd say more scientific. Like, could we say with like a good degree of confidence that all the weather events are like the expressions of global warming?
Hmm.
I don't know the answer to that question. I would say that
Yeah.
the reality is that many people are experiencing extreme weather events in their life, and that tends to be happening more frequently than it did. And regardless of the causal attribution that we make, this is a very real, visceral experience that people are grappling with in their very real lives, floods and fires and droughts and so on. And, the fact that we're not exposed to that as much as other people are doesn't mean it's not happening. And we can feel it around us in the form of these heat waves that Ben described. Certainly, I've been experiencing here in France as well.
Hmm.
So that makes it real in terms of what's going on around us, in terms of the context, the situation. Anyway, with this orientation that we have to attempt to bring ourselves down toward more embodiment, I'm going to invite Benny to lead us on a meditation, little visualization journey for the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. And as we move toward that, I want to connect us with the breath. So I'm going to invite all of us to just do 10 deep breaths um, and allow Benny to screen share. And so I'm going to invite you just briefly, as Benny is preparing to bring his meditation, we're going to do 10 deep breaths together. You can close your eyes if you like. And in your own pace, in your own time, we're just connecting with the belly and doing 10 deep breaths. If it's possible, with the exhale a little bit longer than the inhale.
Hmm.
So, Benny, I invite you to take us on that meditation journey whenever you feel ready.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be playing some low volume music along with it. So I'm just gonna share my screen really quick. Mm, wait, you guys hear?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, yes. Just allow your eyes to shut down. Slowing down the breath, acknowledging that we are occupying minds that like to wander. So that will be an experience that we'll likely encounter. And just approaching that with a sense of gentleness, that in our efforts to hold true to our centers, more wisdom and truth and clarity will be revealed. Just breathing into this center, central axis of our body, this pillar, all the energy centers. Just breathing your body and relaxing it. Just doing brief scans. Just feel all the sensations as patterns of energy blending into each other. Feeling this interior space of I. As we're here, just start to expand your attention and awareness to just the bioenergetic field that both transcends and includes your body. Sensing into the room you're in, noticing that your attention can actually touch the space around you. Just doing this in all directions, behind you, on both sides, in front of you, above you. So just trying to really open the focus where you're feeling your body within a broader field. And now this field contains pathways for information that help to inform our bodies. There's the web of information and communication. Now we can start to zoom out even more to outside of the building that you're in. Just reflecting on all the organisms, whether human pets, insects, the water that's on tap, houseplants, bacteria. Just viewing the building that you're in, noticing that there are many different life forms. Now, just gradually zooming out with your visualization to the neighborhood, just really taking in that we are surrounded by so much life. Zooming out to the city that you're in. Feeling this in your body. And noticing that there is the natural landscape, natural ecologies. And then built on top of that is our built environment, transportation, goods, food, all the things that are sustaining our way of life. And zooming up, starting to see greater patterns of wilderness in between the cities. And noticing in this visualization how you feel looking at a city versus at wilderness. Starting to move up the atmosphere, feeling this big continent of just unimaginable complexity. Feeling into this web that is connecting everything from shore to shore. The topsoil and bacteria and fungi, protozoa in there. The trees reaching up towards the sky. The animals that occupy the trees. To the mountains, the higher elevation. The water cycle. The currents of air that circulate all around the globe. Now really zooming out to just occupy a point in space, looking at this planet. Seeing it outside of you, but knowing that it is within you. It is a part of you and you are a part of it. What is it like to hold this blue-green jewel in front of you? Acknowledge the spaceship we're on. What is it like to know that we are a part of it? and to know that the beauty of it is being threatened. That the greenness and blueness that we see are being slowly eaten. Again, just finding your center from this visualization of seeing Earth floating, surrounded by so much darkness and vacuum, and the celestial body. The infinitesimal odds of this being possible, this life on this planet. Feeling this tug of your connection to the planet actually start to pull you back down. Just feeling this sense of coziness as we start to get closer to the ground. Noticing the vastness still on your way down, the oceans and continents as they start to become more nuanced and defined as we get closer. Now seeing your state or country, zooming into your city, coming to your specific building that you're in or place that you're at. And just hovering above, seeing your body down below. And knowing that within this space of your psyche, it's not compartmentalized, it's penetrable. In the world, the flow of information, life, we are an expression of that. So as we come back down through the top of our heads, again, feeling sensations of your body in this moment, moment to moment. Acknowledging that we could never exist as a separable entity or inextricably intertwined this web, and that it's all around us. Breathing into this sense of power that we have. Being in a body. As we find our breath and begin to bring our attention back to the room that we're in, just letting the dust kind of settle, noticing what's coming up, reflecting on how small we are in the midst of it, that the ways we can tend to the world can be quite powerful through relationship. Still moment to moment awareness. When you're ready, Just start to feel your body with your hands, feel your hands touching each other. Coming back. Of course, opening the eyes at some point. And don't look at the screen. You open your eyes, maybe find something in the room to look at. Maybe another life form you didn't know was there or that you hadn't acknowledged. Hmm. Yeah, and just with eyes open, bringing this awareness to so much movement and so much life. It's happening all around us. Hmm. So, yeah, I'm feeling very meditative just sitting in this. Curious from you guys what's coming up now. Um, yeah, either reflections on an experience you had during that, or just what you're left with um, in this moment.
It was quite the trip going up all the way. I haven't done many practices like that, the zooming out practices, but yeah, it was really nice to remind myself of how small I really am, but not that that means that I'm insignificant. It's just it was beautiful to remind myself of my place in such a vast cosmos, I guess. Such a beautiful planet that we live on.
Hmm. So what do you think what do you feel like is underneath that of like what are I guess yeah, if we were to like double click, do you feel like there's any sort of deeper kind of like sponsoring intel or like wisdom of why that was a nice experience?
Yeah, I think it made me feel more connected to the world and also helped me remember that some of the more mundane worries that I have about my life are not that big of a deal in the grand scope of things. And even my worries about the metacrisis are kind of the I guess a feeling of everything is going to be okay and that I don't have to take on everything because I am when we were zooming back from outer space into back into our bodies, it was just yeah, imagine looking at an ant colony and seeing one ant going and fretting and you know
Mm.
having all these worries in its head and trying to think that it needs to, you know, do all these things to revolutionize the colony or something. I don't know. But not saying that collective action isn't important, but more just like remembering that I'm just an intelligent monkey on a spinning globe, you know.
Yeah.
Does that resonate or make sense?
Yeah. Just like feeling this dialogue of like feeling really small but not insignificant, like you were saying. Like there are
Mm.
individuals who have had such dramatic impacts on the whole. Um, like Martin Luther King or something. And I think it's, yeah, feeling like how small we are, I think is really beneficial for certain reasons, like, oh, why am I stressing out about all these things? Um, and then feeling like we are bigger, I think helps to the fact that like, oh, I'm not just small and insignificant. But yeah, I think they different the
Hmm.
dialectic, both sides of them serve different purposes that I think are, yeah, there's like a nice sweet spot there.
By the bigger part, do you mean being part of the collective consciousness? What do you
Oh,
mean?
I guess maybe like Rumi's like not being a drop in the ocean, but the whole ocean in a drop. Like that my
Hmm.
awareness metaphysically, like at its root, is the kind of like universal consciousness. And that, the pattern, the intelligence, the power of the universe can be within me. And particularly like when it comes to taking action, I guess like never knowing how like what we're doing today will affect the lives of people in the future in just the little cascading ripple domino effect ways. Um, Whether or not you're on a big stage with like a million followers.
Hmm. Like that sense of deep responsibility and what is in is also without, kind of like that. Or seeing yourself as a microcosm for the world.
Yeah, I guess like not getting off the hook of agency because
Hmm.
it can seem like we're so small. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, just be like we are still significant, even though we're small, just one organism within this vast giantness of everything.
Hmm.
Sam,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I might jump in here. Um, in terms of the experience that I had, I'm actually literally sitting on the roof. If I just show you, there's like
Oh,
open
right.
sky above my head where this part of the roof is not closed. And so I feel like I was really able to travel. Um, and what I'm still tuned into here is like during that meditation, I really connected with the weight of the earth beneath us and
mm,
the vastness of the sky, the emptiness of the sky above us, above me. And I was just feeling how this is what I would talk about as part of extended awareness. It's like that what we are is held between earth and sky, and that those aspects of reality, the fact that all of that is right here, sky is here now as this vast empty space, and the earth for me is here now as this huge heavy weight which is supporting me. All of that is like an extension of our body. It's part of our being here. And I just felt very viscerally in touch with that as a result of the meditation. Um, and I think there's something where you guys were reflecting on, feeling small in relation to all the whole earth. And for me, it was like this, I was really feeling when we were zooming out, I was feeling the immensity of the landscape around us that we're like in one little, like backyard or something, but then there's all these lands and they just go and go and go and it's huge, this planet that we're on, and it just extends. And what I was feeling then was remembering, like, in the light of that insignificance that I feel, or like the recognition of our smallness, I remembered, no, we actually have the power of the gods, and we've actually shaped and changed this landscape over thousands of years, and that was quite like when I remembered that, there was like this inversion that happened where I really connected with how big we are, how powerful we are in our ordinary lives. Like the scale of the impact that we can have and that we already have upon the earth is immense, just as immense as the vastness of that earth around us. And when I felt that, when I recognized that, it brought me into this quality of reverence. It really had me wanting to walk each footstep with more care and more, not exactly gentleness, but I think care is the right word. Um, and try to bring this reverential quality into all of my relations, not only with people, but also with objects and with the world.
I'm curious why you feel that way with objects.
I don't know, it was just another category that I thought of. I think I mean that this, when I was feeling toward this reverential quality, it's more like a mode of being. It's a place to come from, and it's a place to come to all our relations, including with the world of things. And it's like, I think in some ways the question would be, why would we exclude our relations with objects from that mode of being? Why, what is it that's different about objects that they're not worthy of being treated and handled with reverence? I mean, maybe one answer is sort of something like, in the modern consumerism, we replace everything every 5 seconds. And you were mentioning earlier that like we're very disconnected from where everything comes from. There's this deep forgetting, it's Heideggerian forgetting that is behind all of the objects that are around us. And that is detaching us. It's de-embedding us. It's dislocating us in relation with all of the stuff around us. It means that there's this shallowness where we don't really know all the objects that are around us right now,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking in contrast of this, little villages that used to exist, where all the furniture would be handmade, and people would patch their clothes, and there would be this, it is a quality of reverence. It is a quality of reusing things, and looking after things it has it's a different mode of being to operate in relation with things that way. I think our relations with things is a one sphere of life where we risk profaning the world by regarding things as dead, lifeless, inert, purposeless objects that are there for us to use. And I think that that's deeply untrue, and that it's like sacrilege to do that, to relate in that way.
Mm. Yeah, I'm really hearing this reclamation of our sense of the sacred and practices that help cultivate that so that we may treat the world accordingly with our godlike power.
Was there anything that you wanted to share, Benny, about what came up for you?
I think I was just staying tuned in. I was trying to like follow my own instructions and then also like lead from where my experience was going. So, um, I think I was naming a lot of what I was feeling, like while leading it. Um, just I think it's easy for me to be in my head and forget like how much is going on. And I feel when I'm in my head, I feel disconnected from the world or capital R reality. Um, but like, yeah, just hearing a bird and knowing that there's so many subjects, so many different like locuses of consciousness and interiority
Hmm.
in some way makes me feel less alone and like a part of something. Um, and I think like that's super key. I think like that's a way where I can like use in terms of finding a healthy relationship between abstraction and embodiment. I think that the abstraction of being able to comprehend we're on this whole globe actually can lead to a more embodied experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but oh, sorry. Nowadays we need the abstraction to get us back into that embodied experience because we don't live in a natural environment anymore, which would kind of automatically lead to ways of life and mythologies that emphasize that sacredness and do have that more um, holistic relationship with the world, for lack of a better word, or more um, understanding of our situatedness in the larger context. And yeah, Benny, you touched on hearing a bird song, and I think there's something about wild animals, encountering wild animals that really brings us that confrontation with the non-human subject, a proper subject that we just is not cannot be integrated and subordinated and mass produced and made into these commercialized objects that we are surrounded with. And I think it's so important to, yeah, realize that there are other subjects that are just as sacred and valuable as humans. But it's difficult to do that when you're only surrounded by objects that are man-made or animals that are subordinated. It is really difficult.
I want to jump in here if I can. I'm conscious of our time container, and in the last, 18, 20 minutes, I want to make sure that we get to close off properly the content of what I want to address today. And so, yeah, I want to look at again this sort of initial framing of like in what way we're relating with this, ecological dimensions of the meta crisis. And we're going to look at how that relating has changed as a result of the meditation that we did. And so interestingly, we were looking a little bit at can we feel into our own smallness in relation to the world? And how can that bring us into a different mode of being in relation with the world? But at the same time, I was invoking this feeling of how big we are, how powerful we already are in our lives, and how that in itself can also bring us towards, a mode of being that I would say has more care in our relations with the world and that can inform our decisions. And I wanted to sort of juxtapose this self-recognition as very big and very small at the same time, and that each can be like a helpful direction to look in. But particularly in relation to this question, as I said, like many people find that when they look at these issues, they can't, and they feel overwhelmed, they feel crushed, they feel they have to avoid or look away, or it's too overwhelming, it's too much for them. And part of what we're looking for here is a place from which we can look at the ecological aspects of the meta crisis without being crushed and overwhelmed. And the question we're going to be asking now is, what is that place? And so I'm hoping that question makes sense to you. Like another way to put it would be, how can I look at this aspect of life in the world in a way that increases my agency? And so I might try and go first here and share a couple of reflections that I had. The first one is probably the most obvious one, is that by connecting with how small I am, I can find a sort of corresponding attitude, the attitude of humility. So I'm connecting the virtue of humility with this self-recognition of being small. It's not a smallness that where I'm crushed or where I'm overwhelmed. It's a smallness where I recognize the the immensity of the complexity around me. And there's a kind of wonder or awe as I open up to that and humility in relation with it. So this is a kind of recognition of how small we are, but in a way that I would argue is kind of healing rather than defeating. And so that's about our smallness in connection with humility, the virtue of humility, because as Socrates said, wisdom begins in wonder. It's by being humble that we can open ourselves to wonder at the complexity of the beauty of the world. But then, part of the question we're asking here is how can we increase our agency? How can we not be crushed and overwhelmed, humiliated? And the recognition here is in the power that we already have. So it's feeling how big we are in relation to the world. We're these big creatures. Humans are quite large physically, We're actually like an emergent property of the, symbiosis between a whole lot of mitochondria and bacteria and viruses. The body is a kind of emergent property of all of that. And then on the world, humans have like reshaped the earth on a grand scale over a very long time. And then if you look at like the resource use of any particular individual, we do have quite the impact. And so what I was feeling into here was that the a way of looking at the situation, this sort of ecological crisis stuff, where I don't have to feel crushed and overwhelmed, is recognizing that I'm actually already participating in that unfolding. I'm already doing that, whether I choose to look at it or not. And so this connects me with a kind of responsibility that I have in recognizing the sacredness, beauty, and complexity of that world, including of my own body, the body that we decide should be full of microplastics or something like that. It's not just about protecting the earth, it's about protecting ourselves because we are the earth. This is the whole point, right? What I'm talking about here is that there's a recognition of our responsibility of trying to be mindful and choose wisely that comes about as a result of noticing that we do impact the world already. And if we can connect with the way that we already do have power and agency, then we can grow that in a way that is beneficent and benevolent and toward the good, rather than feeling our disempowerment, feeling our puniness, and feeling stuck in unable to change anything. Because we already change a lot. We already do. That's the truth. We already change a lot. Might not
When you say
feel like
we,
it. Yeah, I mean each of us and also all of us together. And we do have these like ripple effects on the relational web, and we do make choices in our individual lives about what resources we use. And all of that is a very real impact, participation in the human superorganism that is interacting with the planet.
Hmm. Um,
And so, yeah,
yeah, that's Sam, if I may, that reminds me of Jordan Peterson talking about evil actions and how since we entered the age of atomic weapons, where we do have these genuine human imposed existential risks, every action that every individual takes has the potential to either it has the potential to move the world one step closer to total human extinction or destruction of the biosphere. And I think in that framing, there is such a high level of responsibility in every individual for all of these systemic um, crises that we're facing. But yeah, the responsibility, seeing that you're participating in the system, that's where a lot of people struggle to really accept that, at least in my opinion. I'm not sure if you guys have a different take on that. But
I
sorry if I interrupted you.
no, no, not at all. I felt like I'd come to a natural moment of completion, and I guess just kind of in summary, I might like that responsibility piece was important alongside these other virtues that I named. Like, there were qualities like humility, reverence, wonder, recognition of the power and agency that we already have, recognizing our interdependence with the world, all going along with the taking responsibility in light of that recognition. I think what came up for me is wanting to tee up Benny here, you know, because Ben mentioned like what Peterson named about the great significance of being alive at this time in this moment, and that the actions that humans normally take is maybe more significant than at any point in the past. And that what is brought up for me is like a dim memory of the Bucky Fuller quote that you brought yesterday, Benny. And so I wanted to, maybe tee up by asking you what feels to you important about looking at these topics in recognition of the significance of this time. What's so significant about this moment that we're living through and the choices that we make?
Yeah, that feels like a big question. That's like
Yeah.
above my pay grade, but without expectations to like have some nice, pithy, eloquent answer. Um, yeah, feel for me, just like rambling and just I don't know, just taking my best guess at this. Um, so you're saying what does it mean to be alive in this time, and how does that imply? What does that say about like how we take action and stuff? Um,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I think like some people framed it as like kairos, which is like chronos and kairos are two different forms of time in ancient Greece, and chronos is linear time, kairos is like could be interpreted different ways, but in the way here is kind of this liminal space where time could be a bit more vertical than horizontally linear, and one person has more. It's like the rules of reality change, and one person could have more of an effect on the whole than just a normal linear time. Um, I think like there is a responsibility to feel what's at stake. And I think what it means is that like, there's like an old Chinese adage of like, it's very simple. It's just like, may you live in interesting times. And I think we live in profoundly interesting times. And what sucks about it is what Stephen Taylor calls taking for granted syndrome. And I think different comforts and convenience and scroll holes, technology that reify um, this sense of taking things for granted and not realizing like the preciousness of life and also like the challenges that we face. They seem very like connected to me, like savoring and then saving the world. Um,
Benny, what is at stake?
I mean, I would say like this thing Samantha Sweetwater said. She's like one of the saddest sounds in the universe is like a planet dying before it reaches its evolutionary potential. And so I think we're in
Mm.
a really lucky position that maybe feels a bit hubristic to say, but like I think we are the universe's greatest capacity in form to have awareness of itself and of the masterful artwork that is like form in the universe. Um, and I've been awestricken by the depths that we're able to feel in terms of beauty and expression and aliveness, and especially when people come together. So I do think that particularly our species has this kind of like higher ceiling for um, just so much like creativity and beauty and experiences that there's not even words for. Um, but I sense that it's something really good, and it's not in an exclusive way. I think it's in a way where we become like step into a role of being much more of a steward of beauty and biodiversity and life on Earth and complexity. And um, I think ultimately this um, collective aim for what Mark Gaffney calls the unique self symphony, like to identify, like to get in touch with our hearts and our guts and our right minds and identify where our unique mind, body, soul system is being drawn towards. Like what identifying those callings and then like doing what we have to do, working through fears and doubts and laziness to step into them. And I just trust in the deep intelligence of nature that it is that voice guiding us to take our play our role in some sort of great turning. You know, there's a lot of talks about like Kali Yuga or great turning, and I've been particularly inspired by Chris Bache's vision of the future of humanity, which I won't really get into right now. But I do think what's at stake is another mass extinction and a planet not reaching its evolutionary potential through us, by us, as us.
Okay, and so to follow on from that, in relation to our, our final question of the day, in that context, what is the place from which you can look at these dimensions of the metacrisis without being crushed and overwhelmed? What does that place feel like for you? It's a question for both of you, really. What I'm asking about is like, where can you look at this issue, this reality, in a way that, like, how can you look at it in a way which increases agency?
I oh, I do want to mention I don't have to like hard stop, but I have to get going like kind of soon after 12:30 or the third
Yep.
midway of the hour. Um, I honestly think that we've been like arriving at some sort of inklings of answers before the question was even posed, which I think you articulated most beautifully about the humility and empowerment
Hmm.
from doing this kind of like Hegelian synthesis. Um, I think there's something about that concept that feels like a really healthy, almost like not specific, not too specific, but vague enough to be like applied to everybody, everybody's perspective.
Mm. Ben?
Yeah, I think that that mix of humility and empowerment is it's a it's a pretty good answer. Um, I guess, yeah, in a pragmatic terms, it it I mean, you'd have ecology practices and stuff like that to develop that humility and also that sense of connectedness and um, realizing that you're participating in the system. But then I guess just getting educated about these these issues and maybe making, I mean, I'm assuming we're all privileged enough to choose to work on these issues and to have these be part of our professional lives in some way. So I think that's a big part of the empowerment. Unfortunately, not a lot of people are in the position to actually work on these issues. But yeah, yeah, it's emotionally, I couldn't imagine um, being completely isolated and also being emotionally um, capable of working on these issues at all. There's something to me that's so essential about talking to other people about it and feeling it in a social space and not just internalizing it and keeping it all trapped in your head. This all of these complexities and um, strong negative emotions, so that it really is good to reify this relationship that we have to these crises. Because I think a lot of people, as you've said, just deny or avoid that itself is a response. And I think that is a big contributor to a lot of the problems.
Mhm.
Is mass inaction.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I want to ask you both to listen to something that I have to say as we transition toward closing thoughts. I want to take Daniel Schmachtenberger's trio of head, heart, and will and map it onto the cosmology that I was naming before about heaven, human, and earthly. And so these layer over each other, heaven, human, and earthly, head, heart, and will. And so for me, it's coming back to, my foundational spiritual practice among the rest of the ecology of practices, which for me is meditation. And so for me, this is in the third eye space and the sahad, the crown chakra space. It's connecting up with the Father. It's connecting with heaven. This is meditation or it's prayer, and it's going deeply within and connecting with some kind of higher vision. It's finding that stillness, finding that space within us that we then bring down into our lives. That's what I take it when I say being aware of all the threads that are connecting us with heaven. It's these moments of kairos. It's these moments of the eternal that infuse and inform our mundane, profane lives. Then coming down into the human sphere, into the relational sphere, it's this recognition that every conversation that I have, every interaction, even any moment of interaction with objects, and especially in relation with the world itself, this is a drop on the scales that is tipping humanity toward, you know, the fulfillment of all the potential that is available to us through future generations, infinite future generations, or the failure to fulfill our evolutionary potential, collapse and extinction. And that each relationship, each choice that I make, each conversation, each word that I say can tip those scales in the right direction. And that's actually happening every time I say anything.
Mm.
And bringing it down one layer lower, down toward the earth and our relations with the earth in head, heart, and will. So this is about action. This is about what I do. It's about reminding myself that I want that meditative stillness, and the recognition of that significance and meaningfulness of our interactions. I want that to inform every step that I take, every decision that I make about what I do and where I go, all of my relations, like what I eat, what I use, water, power. Do I really need this? Do I really need that? Embodying the wisdom of restraint a little bit more in relation to the earth. So when I talk about holding all the threads that connect us up with heaven, and then holding all the threads in action that connect us down with the earth, and honoring that and hallowing that and sacralizing that within a sphere of prayerfulness that infuses all of our relationships. This is to me a kind of, it's not just a cosmology, it's also an ethic. How to be in relation to this aspect of what we call metacrisis. It's from that,
Mm.
it's in that mode of being. If you take that cosmology as a mode of being in that, I feel much more agency. I feel empowered. I feel able to make sense in those terms. Can I make those terms available to others in this way?
Mm. And
I
that's
want
a
to
sign
leave
of
that.
the, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, the fact that it makes sense is a sign of the effectiveness of that ethic and that
Yeah,
cosmology. And if the more the ethic allows you to feel properly situated in the world, the more it probably conforms to not reality, because I mean it's ethics, but the more adaptive it is, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
absolutely. And so I just want to sort of leave that there where it is, and let's transition to just final closing thoughts where you're left today. I want to connect with what does it actually feel like in your body to be here? I'm not asking for a long ramble. I'm just asking for a final check-in about where you're situated at the end of the call today. And we'll do it briefly because I know that Benny has to go. But Benny, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Um, I am feeling this kind of anxiety of like wanting to go. But aside from that, um, I feel quite relaxed and I really feel like I want you to make a map of what you just said. And I'd also be willing to like help contribute to that. But I feel like looking at a visual of that head, heart, and will would be like really valuable and helpful.
I'll try and draw it. Thank you. How do you feel in your body as a result of the call, Benny?
Yeah, I think like I was saying, relaxed.
Hmm.
Um, maybe there is some confusion still. So I'm like, all right, do I still have to like go out and enact this? Or yeah, I guess just left with the question, confusion fueling this question of like, all right, how does this call actually look in the way it changes me after we end it? And so now that I asked that, I am feeling quite attuned to wanting to encounter every person and thing with sacredness, reverence, kind
Hmm. When you
of
say that,
relaxed inspiration.
yeah, relaxed inspiration. That's a beautiful phrase. When you say that, I'm reminded of this virtue of just holding uncertainty. And confusion, I think, is a kind of embodied form of uncertainty, don't you think? And I just want to name, like,
Yeah.
just being able to talk about that confusion, just by bringing that confusion up and not needing to have like a formula or a solution to like, oh, quick, we've worked out the answer. Now we know, you know. It's not about that. It's just about allowing ourselves to be a little bit less certain, a little bit more confused, and walking with a little bit more gentleness, don't you think? A little bit more reverence. This is what I'm drawn to anyway. I feel like that
Yeah.
confusion doesn't, there's nothing wrong with that confusion, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't feel any
Thank
sense
you.
of inadequacy around that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying
Mm.
that because there was kind of, I think, a bit of an implicit pressure to be like, oh, we're at the end of the call. Like, I should feel like better now, and like my confusion's been released. But yeah, so thank you for stating that.
And this is also part of the reason that we'll come back every week and start to deepen more into how exactly we can act differently and so on. If you need to drop off, feel free to. I'm just going to do some closing thoughts here with Ben, but it's up to you how you use the
Okay.
time from here. But
Yeah.
Ben, how about for
I'll,
you? Where, yeah, you're going to drop off?
I'll just say bye, but I'm gonna
Yep.
just like just because I don't want to interrupt, but I'm gonna stay for like another minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, man. And yeah.
Yeah.
So Ben, how about for you? Where are you left at the end of the call today?
Um, yeah, I feel a bit of anxiety about, to be honest, saying the right things and
Hmm.
feeling like I performed well and sounding smart and informed. Um, and yeah, thinking about the ecological problem did bring up some tension in my chest and my upper abdomen. but it's kind of a it's not an unpleasant level of tension. It's just there, and I'm kind of accepting it and just sitting with it. Yeah. And maybe that's kind of the partly the uncertainty manifesting itself as some stress or anxiety. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the gist of it for me.
And any final thought that you would choose to leave us with?
It's been a pleasure and been good to see your face again. Yeah. And I hope it's not as hot where you are as it is where I am, or that the housing is better at accommodating the heat because it's not here. Yeah.
Well, if I'm honest with you, I'm in this like 9 bedroom medieval chateau, which is like ancient
Oh,
and
wow.
kind of haunted. And it does have very limited capacity to deal with heat tolerance, actually. So we're trying to open it as much as the windows as we can in the
Hmm.
nighttime to allow some air to flow through this ghostly mansion. It's a wonderful place to be with about, 10 other aligned people. So anyway, that's my share. I'm struck at the end here just by the little irony of kind of what felt for me like a great way to actually get some insight into, applying my sort of underlying symbolic cosmology to an ethic of how to relate to the ecological dimension of the metacrisis and how to sense make in relation to it. And I feel, for me, quite satisfied by what I came up with and the irony of like that seeming to put pressure on other people is just so palpable to me. So I feel really amused by that at the end of the call here. And um, despite that amusement, I feel that this call was a success. I think we got through all the main parts that I wanted to reflect on, and I think it did bring up a lot that was original and allowed us space to reflect. I think the intention is just to start practicing this and to start to move towards something that has more flow and more coherence and which can be more impactful for people. And even just bringing the two of you together, two of my oldest friends at this point, um, that was in itself quite meaningful. So yeah, I wanted to formally close the end of the call here. So I'm going to
Hmm.
stop the record. Thank you for anyone that stayed with us, and we'll see you in the next one.